What if I told you that your listing, it could be getting thousands of views, impressions, and clicks, but you could be getting very low sales. And this is what a low conversion rate causes. Not only that, but it also lowers your rank continuously on the first ranking page and other implications that we'll get through in this video. My name is Jassim Asa. We've helped dozens of brands scale and grow their brands on Amazon marketplaces and other marketplaces. We've generated hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about what conversion rate is, why it's so important, the main levers that impact conversion rate, and how we can affect those, and also 5 things to be very aware of while fixing your conversion rate and something that actually costs us thousands of dollars within that. So stick with me so I can get through that. So the first thing I wanted to get through is what is conversion rate. So let's break it down. CVR, it's also obviously known as. So conversion rate is there's 3 funnels as we described through this mini growth series. And this is obviously the last one of those, the last video of that. We talked initially about impressions and then we got into click through. And now we're talking about conversion rate. So impressions is how many people see your listing in total. So let's say that's 1,000. Let's say that's 10,000. Out of those 10,000, let's say 1,000 click on your listing, and that's 10% click through rate. So now they're on your product detail page. Out of those 1,000, let's say 100 buy your listing, buy your product. So that's now 10% conversion rate. So conversion rate is the rate at which people go buy your product from the people that clicked on it. So it's a rate, obviously it's a percentage. After going on your PDP, how many people buy it? And why it's so important? It's because obviously this is the most important thing, because you won't get any sales at all if you have zero conversion rate. It doesn't matter if thousands of people saw your item or hundreds of millions. If they're not following through and getting pushed over the last step where you accomplish a sale, all of that is a waste. As a matter of fact, you're going to be losing a lot of money. So that's what conversion rate implies. So now let's talk about the main factors that obviously influence conversion rate. So some of these are actually correlated with click-through rate, and I'll mention which ones those are. But let's start with the ones that are more or all solely for conversion rate. So the first one is going to be the secondary images, videos, UGC, that kind of stuff. Obviously, as you're scrolling through the main page of Amazon, you can't see secondary images, you can't see videos unless it's a video ad, but that's, we're talking about the PDP and buying specifically. So when you go to that, the secondary images obviously have a huge impact. A customer kind of is looking for more information. That's why you hear often suggestions of having informational photos in there, lifestyle photos, so they can see how the product is used. And that's where you're also going to do a lot of testing. And that's a very big factor in impacting conversion rate. Because if it doesn't go through what the customer was looking for or intended in the when they initially pressed on the main image in the title and they didn't find what they were looking for, then it's going to be very unlikely for them to continue over the last phase and convert and buy that product. So we're going to talk about some, also I'll give real life examples in the last section, but having aligned messaging and going through the customer's checklist and understanding your customer, obviously extremely crucial for having a high conversion rate based on secondary images, and having videos or UGC, user generated content to implement this. After that, we get into maybe premium. These are also solely focused on conversion rate. We get into premium A+ content. We also so this is basically Amazon shifted over. They used to have just A+, now people call it A++ or premium A+ content, and also brand story. So this is where you scroll down, you see like kind of more information on the brand, more information on the item. This is also, if nothing, it pushes, especially on the mobile, it pushes your competitors' products down. So if you go in a product detail page, you'll see compare similar items to. If you don't have A+ content, that's going to show up much higher. We want to put the A+ content, pushes it down, but it also makes the listing looks more professional. It kind of gives the final push or final motivation for that customer to drive through and finish through things. We also have bullet points that they're not as impactful. You can see these all the way at the bottom when you're scrolling through mobile. And that's another thing actually that's really impactful, is to, when you're looking at secondary images, when you're looking at premium A+ content, make sure you're looking at them for mobile. You can still use your desktop. You can download an extension called Mobile Simulator. But basically, like, I don't know what the statistics are specifically, but I would assume that 90% of purchases probably happen through mobile. So you have to see what the mobile buying experience feels and looks like among those things. So now that we mentioned a few things that are solely for obviously conversion rate, we can mention the stuff that are correlated, that we also mentioned click-through rate. These are things like pricing, for example. When customers see the bright badge for coupons or bright badge for lightning deals, that's why it's much better to have a high MSRP and have strike-throughs rather than just lowering your prices, because it kind of gives it a further stimulus for the customer to push through. And you have to measure what's your conversion rate on different percentages and different coupons. Different audiences like different types of coupons. Some of them might like a percentage, other ones like dollars off. So look at your conversion rate and your absolute profit, not necessarily relative profit, at different coupon types, at different prices, etc. Now, other than that, obviously we get into like for reviews. That's also, you can see that on main page, but when you go into the secondary page, you can see specifically what the customers right now. It has AI analyzing it, the pluses with the negatives. So they're looking at that obviously as well. Then other stuff obviously is like the badges. So when you're trying to lower your, that's where I can mention an example, is where we're basically trying to get Amazon bestseller badge. And what we did, it was a seasonal item, it was a Christmas gift basically. So our MSRP for the item is $38.99. We wanted to improve. Amazon gives you these badges when they see an improved conversion rate. So we wanted to improve it. We lowered the price to $24.99, I think, very significant. We did that for a few weeks. Then we kept raising it back to the MSRP. We did it before Christmas, a month and a half, and we only raised it once we got the badge. And then Amazon let us have that badge. It was the number one bestseller badge in that category, so it was huge. And we basically kept that badge as we gradually raised the price back. We didn't raise it all at once. We didn't want to suppress buy box or to change the algorithm too significantly. But even once we did that, our sales compared to the year before for that item were, not only did we sell 40% more units, but we sold them at a much higher price. So we almost doubled the overall revenue of that parent listing based on that strategy. So badges are crucial. We talked about bestseller badge, new to market badge, all that kind of stuff are very important. And as we recap the levers that move CVR, I mentioned a lot of them. Obviously, here are the main ones. We have to keep in mind that CVR operates still as part of a flywheel with click-through rates and impressions. So a higher conversion rate. At the end of the day, before we even get into that, let's stick to the basics. Amazon wants a good customer journey experience. It's not a mystery. You have to think just what Amazon wants, and you have to align your basically business values with what Amazon wants to fulfill that better. So they want a healthy customer journey. They want revenue. They want customers to spend money. They don't want to waste the customers' money browsing through a lot of things and making it hard for them to make a purchase. So they see that your product has a low conversion rate, Amazon gets frustrated because they saw that they showed your product, they let the customer click through, but eventually they fell off. So they're gonna eventually give you less impressions, and when you get less impressions, you're gonna get less click throughs on your item as a result. So it all results in each other. So as you get a higher conversion rate, you're going to get more click throughs, you're going to get more impressions, because Amazon sees that the customer journey flowed seamlessly throughout that basically buying experience. And obviously the conversion rate is relative to your competitors. So you can use Amazon SQP, search query performance, to analyze what your conversion rate looks like to your competitors. I can get into that in another video, specifically how to find that out. But there's obviously other programs too that help, like Jungle Ace and a few other ones that help you find that different analysis. So just understand that conversion rate operates within a flywheel. Understand that, just think about things from a basic first principle standpoint, that you want a healthy shopping experience. When Amazon sees that when you have basically strong reviews, secondary images that check through the customer's checklist, Amazon sees a healthy shopping experience, they're going to promote your listing further. So just think about the basics, how we can further that, a healthy shopping experience, and understanding obviously your customer avatar or your ICP, or ideal customer profile, and having them look through the listing, maybe seeing someone locally. What do you think? What's checkpoints? Just one example, we were selling a baby item, for example, the other day, and I had one of the ICPs, I just told her, check out our product, basically. It was a recent mom, and she was looking through it. I was like, oh, neutral colors, that's nice. Oh, where is it mentioned it's non-toxic? I was like, it is non-toxic, but we had that in the bullet points. I was like, what the heck, people barely see that. So we moved that to the title, and that impacted things. So just hearing that feedback live was obviously very relevant, and it kind of, sometimes you forget about the basics as you listen to that experience. So as we're trying to improve our conversion rate, here are 5 key things that we like to keep in mind as we optimize for that and implement some of the stuff we mentioned before. The first one is having aligned messaging, from basically the main image and the title being aligned to the secondary images, the premium A+ content, the bullet points. It matches what the main image and the title were, because the that customers are clicking on your product, but you want to make sure that they buy it. So as long as they see alignment with the initial reason they clicked, that raises the likelihood of them buying. I want to mention an example of the main title and the image were showing organic supplements. They're basically high quality premium supplements made in the USA. The main image was tailored to that. The title had that in there. But then the secondary images were basically just lifestyle photos, people using it, rather than speaking more to that main image and title, what brought them into the first place. So once we updated secondary images, once we updated the content to have, for example, tests, to have more made in the USA, to have the type of quality ingredients that we use, we see an almost 50% rise in conversion rate. It went from 10% conversion to 15%. And that almost impacted our sales by like 30 or 40% growth, just aligning the messaging throughout the journey, the customer journey. From the secondary images, the UGC, the type of person using it. There's someone that's health aware, for example, in the videos. All those concepts are very important, that it's aligned and consistent and seamless for that customer journey, basically. The second part is understanding your funnel. So basically, this is like, and this is something that frustrates me a lot, is like, I see people trying to fix for, and we've seen a brand do this, they were fixing for conversion rate, right? I took a look, I was like, your PDP, your product detail page looks great. Your content, images, like a lot of it is optimized appropriately. But what they're really missing, and they had reviews, they had all the things that we talked about earlier, basically. But what they're really missing is that their impressions were very low. Based on the bid that they had, they were used to other categories where they can, a CPC, cost per click, was $1 or $2. They were used to bidding that, getting that click-through rate, but they weren't, for supplements, it's very different. It's much more competitive. You have to be in the $4, $5, $6, $7 range. So they weren't getting enough impressions. So the issue in their funnel wasn't the conversion rate, the bottom part of it. It was the first part. They weren't getting enough impressions. Once they got impressions, the conversion rate indeed was very high. They just know that their sales were low. When I looked obviously at the data, and that's why it's important to know your data, I seen the conversion rate was healthy, click-through rate was healthy. It was impressions that was low. So once they started getting more impressions, Amazon started ranking it more because they proved that their conversion rate is good for a larger data set of customers, and they got that push eventually. So understanding where the leak in your funnel is, if it's conversion rate, then yes, look at all the things we talked about and optimize them appropriately too. Start with the priority things. Don't go to bullet points when your secondary images suck. Start with the right things, please. And then the third part is also going through your customers' checklists. I mentioned the example of the baby playmat. Like the mother, she mainly cared about safety and that kind of stuff. Where we were promoting like it's flexible, functional, but those could be cool. But let's focus on the basics. That it has to have non-toxic. Add that in the for the playmat, the baby playmat that we're talking about, and so we moved that up a little bit. We moved that to earlier in the images. It was on the fourth or fifth image. We moved it second or third because the fall off rate for images, it reduces significantly from second to third to fourth, etc. And we also moved it up in the bullet points. We also moved it up in different areas like the premium A+ content, so that we can check off our customer. You have to think individual. One of the best analogies I gave is that a customer has a checklist in their mind that they're subconsciously going through as they're browsing your PDP. They want to make sure that it hits the needs that they're looking for. If they're looking for a pill for migraines, but it suddenly talks about, for example, a relief from shoulder pain, even though the item could be doing both, you don't want to mention the shoulder pain, because if you're targeting migraine, that was on your main image and title, keep your messaging aligned to that. Because if they see shoulders, like, oh, this is probably generic and it does a little bit of the shoulder, a little bit of the head, I want something specifically for my head, and they're going to fall off. And we've seen that happen often. So just be aware of that as you go through it. The fourth thing is making sure that you're testing. Test. We mentioned this for click-through, we mentioned this for impression. Always testing. The customer landscape changes, the customer preferences change. So just make sure that you're always on top of it and you're understanding what the latest things are. You can use Manager Experience, a free testing tool. We love it, to test A+ content, etc. See your conversion rate for different price points. All that kind of stuff is stuff that you should be testing for. And the fifth one, this is where we had a lot of our partners before joining us losing a lot of money, is they would be spending a lot of money on ads and impressions before optimizing their conversion rate. So their click-through rate was optimized for their main image and title and some of the other stuff, basically the price. It looked great on an initial perspective. With the customer click-through, the messaging wasn't aligned, they didn't go through the customer's checklist, they didn't understand their customer well enough, and it would fall through there, and they had leakage there. But that's a big issue because you're going to be spending on your ads. Amazon is a PPC system. It's pay per click. They're not charging you for impressions. They're not charging you for conversions. They're charging you for clicks. So if they're clicking and they're going to your product detail page and they don't like what you're seeing, you're going to lose thousands of dollars. So now we have actually a checklist that we built that before we publish any ads, basically we have to make sure that we go through that checklist. We're optimizing conversion rate and all the stuff within it, because then we want to make sure we're using our money impactfully on the ads. To put this all together, you just have to understand that Amazon is optimizing for the customer journey. They want focus on the fundamentals, make a healthy listing that aligns to your customers' behaviors. And then once you have good conversion rate, that's going to make click-through rate easier. That's going to make impressions easier. And it's just going to improve the overall performance of your product, of course, and your overall sales, which is the primary objective. So if you like this video, make sure you tune into the rest of the mini growth series. You can watch click-through rate before this, because that's our step right before this. I'm going to have it right here. And then also make sure that if you have any problems with conversion rate or very high ACoS that's most likely led by this, make sure to drop a comment below, and I'll try to get back. I'll personally get back to everyone.